Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to PSPA's webinar. This is part of our international activity, no? A conference for the PSPA International Conference in November 2020 rather. So this PSPA's webinar is entitled Imperatives of Leadership, Governance and Innovations at the Time of the New Normal. It's a knowledge co-creation in the fourth industrial revolution era. So what we are discussing today is a pathway, no, again to our international conference in November 2020. So we would like to present to you this afternoon another area in public administration, and that is development entrepreneurship. This is an approach to pursuing reforms using entrepreneurial principles. And this afternoon session is in collaboration with Asia Foundation. So maraming salamat po, Asia Foundation, for making us a partner in this endeavor and advocacy as well. So we will be enlightened by our development entrepreneur experts from Asia Foundation. First, we'll have Mr. Jaime Faustino, Strategic Advisor of the Coalitions for Change Partnership. He will talk about how these key concepts on entrepreneurial development have been applied, no, in by giving concrete examples as well. And then later on, Ms. Krish Gascon will share with us her experience with the reform she and her team pursued in disaster risk management. So at this point in time, I would like to acknowledge our participants via Zoom and YouTube Live. They are from different universities and colleges in the Philippines, as well as from different private and public organizations. So we are happy to have you here today. And also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our PSP board members. We have Dr. Al Derecho with us, Dr. Christy Salvosa, Professor Sonia Pimentel, and also our faculty members from DAP Graduate School. We have Dr. Rebolida. She will give her observations and reactions later on after the presentation. And also, we would like to acknowledge Dr. Grace Hammond. Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. And also, I saw earlier, Ma'am Milagros Rimando from NEDAG. Good afternoon, everyone. So to start with, I would like to request Sir Jaime to give us a short message for the participants and for our guests as well. Sir Jaime?
Yeah, thank you. Please don't call me Jaime. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Jaime Faustino. I work at the Age Foundation on behalf of the foundation and our partners at the Australian Embassy. I'm really delighted that we have this chance, and we're really excited to kind of try this out. This is one of our first experiments to do this. All kinds of new things happening with this because of this COVID-19. But anyway, we're very pleased to be able to try this out with you. So I hope you'll be patient with us and kind as we try to make sense of what's happening. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, sir, for that opening statement. And to give us a brief introduction on what is this module all about, we will request Mr. Rene Sanopo. And by the way, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Lizan Kalina. I'll be your moderator, and I will be assisted by Sir Rene Sanopo. Sir Rene?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I recognize a lot of faces. I recognize my idol, Dr. Al Derecho. I call him the Indiana Jones of PSPA because he not only teaches, but he goes out to the field and practices also. So we are here as members of a team that's called the Coalitions for Change. It is a partnership between the Asia Foundation and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of the Australian Embassy in the Philippines. We shorten that by calling it DFAT. And this partnership is all about economic reform and policy reform. And our work here, under the leadership of Jaime, has been going on for more than a decade already. In this work, we have adopted a way of proceeding, a way of pursuing reform that is a little bit different, or in a large way different from the traditional way It's a more adaptive, it's a more flexible, I would say it's a more pragmatic way of pursuing reform. And Mr. Faustino has coined the term development entrepreneurship to for this approach of reform. Now, a lot of people would tend to think that this is about business because of the term entrepreneurship. So I'd like to start by saying that this is about policy reform, and policy reform being pursued according to the principles of entrepreneurship. And Jaime will elaborate on that during his talk a few minutes from now. So may I introduce my team? You've already met our chief strategist, our strategic advisor, Mr. Jaime Faustino. We also have with us this afternoon Miss Eliza Alfonso, and the other presenter is Mrs. Krish Gascon. She had her video on a few minutes ago, but we will see her again later. So what will happen is that Jaime will present the key concepts, basically lectures, theory about development entrepreneurship, and Krish will make it more concrete for us by presenting her experience in a particular reform, which has something to do with disaster risk and reduction. So our objectives for this afternoon's webinar is, of course, to introduce the approach that we call development entrepreneurship and to share the experiences of one of our teams on how they apply these concepts to a specific reform. And finally, we would like to encourage members of the PSPA, Philippine Society for Public Administration, to be engaged in policy reform. We know that many of you are already engaged. And for those who are engaged, we would like to invite you to try out this approach that we call development entrepreneurship. That's basically all I have to say at this point. And without further ado, I think we should dive into the subject matter of our webinar. And I'd like to bring back Mr. Jaime Faustino to talk to us about development entrepreneurship. Himes?
Yeah, thank you, Renee. Okay, I'm going to shut off my video here for a second. I'm going to try and just see if this is working.
Wrong screen, Himes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
There, that's it. That's the one.
Okay. All right, I got it. Good afternoon again, everybody. So we'll just start in. So kind of just, others maybe have heard of this term. I've just, one of the things you'll notice here is that the model tends to steal a lot from different sources with our footnotes, etc. Right? So you'll see many things hopefully that are familiar to you. So a term that was developed. Hold on one second. Now I can't figure out how to move forward here. 1 second, my screen froze. Here are the four, kind of concepts, right? That this is the kind of world we live in. Of course, I guess the COVID-19 has really changed the nature and speed. Certainly there's unpredictability. Maybe we can take a vote on whether we will go to GCQ in the next week, right? And the idea that things are very complex and there's also they're very ambiguous. So that's kind of the world, excuse me, that we're living in. And kind of how do you make sense of, and how do you find your way through this fog of this VUCA world? That's kind of the way we're starting this. So when you think about, when we think about what can we do to improve society, right? We think about the other question of how do we identify and introduce the reform, right? There are two parts to that. And the third one, third challenge is kind of who's going to do it. So what we've tried to establish in this particular approach which is based, on literature as well as on our own kind of practical experiences. Is that we've kind of organized it into these three categories of what's the reform, what process do we take, and what are the kind of leaders that we need to work with in order to, or what are the practices of the leaders in order to achieve these changes for society. Okay, so in a nutshell, when we think of development entrepreneurship, this kind of concept that we've developed is there are those three principles. The leaders using entrepreneurial principles, right, to introduce reform to improve things in society. Okay, now we've tried to kind of distill again based on experience, based on kind of internet, development literature, literature from strategy, literature from economics, et cetera, and political science and public administration. I think you'll notice some of there are certainly strains of public administration for sure in some of the approaches. So we basically have distilled it down to 5 sets of entrepreneurial principles, 4 behaviors that leaders exhibit as they practice this, and 3 criteria that make for an effective reform. So we tried to make it simple that we kind of remember the 5, 4, 3. So the rest of the session, at least when I'm speaking, I'll give you present what we think are the useful concepts for the 5, 4, and the 3. And then Krish will kind of provide some of the granular details of an example, a case of how these principles, behaviors, and criteria were applied for a specific reform. Okay, I'll keep moving forward. So when we're just determining, again, I'll just go back, which criteria, right? So the reform, which reform? So we're going to look at the 3 criteria of the reform. So the first question, well, one of the criteria is, if we're able to introduce a reform, is it likely to change the incentives and behavior of social actors to lead to better outcomes, right? So just kind of constantly asking the question, okay, if we introduce this change, because oftentimes, as you know, in many places, you can introduce a law, or you can introduce a rule in an ordinance, no jaywalking, et cetera, and then it doesn't change the behavior of social actors. So we're constantly trying to figure out which one will have the higher probability of really changing in the incentives and behavior. The second criteria for a good reform is question of sustainability. So is it likely to become part of, kind of everyday practice? Right? And that's where you're looking at that people kind of police themselves, or because of their own self-interest will act in a certain way, right? That's both for government, universities, institutions, et cetera. So you're looking at it so you don't have to be there all the time to make sure that the reform continues beyond it. I will be giving a few specific examples in a little bit, just to put some clarity on that. The third one is whether or not it's politically feasible. So we may have good ideas. We think it'll lead to some good impact. We also think that it's likely to continue beyond our term or beyond the period of our intervention. But is it likely to be introduced given the political realities, right? And so of course, and second nature to people in public administration. So, with those 3 criteria, when we're hunting and trying to identify the reform, we're kind of using these criteria. Oftentimes in the beginning, you may have 1 or 2 of the criteria, right? But eventually, if you're successful, you'll actually complete the 3. I'll give you a few examples we've worked on. I hope some of you have flown out of Clark Airport. So here is a graph on Clark Airport's growth until 2018. I think for 2019, I think they hit 4 million passengers. So quite a bit more than the kind of 2.6 that they hit in 2018. So again, think of the three criteria of reform, and it had the president making a statement that they were going to fully develop Clark gave carriers the signal that they should invest in Clark when they built a new terminal. If you'll notice under President Aquino, they de-emphasized Clark and they were actually promoting Sangley Airport. The carriers responded by not developing their routes. So you'll see the decrease from 2012 down to 2015. So you see, so the market will respond and so will passengers, right? Depending on the signals and the policy signals that are being set. So here you see a quick turnaround from an airport that was not being developed to one that was. And the political feasibility is because the new administration could see the value. And of course, Secretary Tugade came from Clark Development Corporation. Vince Dizon is also from there. So, you know, there are a lot of people who wanted to see the development of Clark in this administration. Okay, next one is a tobacco tax on alcohol and tobacco. Oh, sorry, the tax on alcohol and tobacco. Same thing, question of impact, sustainability, and also political feasibility. The political feasibility is we had to pass it before the midterm election. So this is before 2013. So the law was passed in December 2012. We had assumed that the president's political clout would be lower in the second half of the administration. So there was a concerted push to move that forward in the first half. Here's kind of the question on impact, whether or not it changes people's behavior. So you'll see the group of the top line is the people who never smoke. So since the law was introduced in 2012, the number has increased of people who have never smoked, and the people who are the current smokers, you can see that number is also decreasing. Round two for excise tax on alcohol and tobacco. This is just another set of reforms. So basically what, I know it's a lot of numbers, I'm sorry, but the basic idea is if we had not changed the law in 2017, that's what it would, you know, the 2017, it would have been in 2020, 37. In the 2019 law, it's now up to 45 pesos per pack. Just to give you a comparison of what those differences, what the changes were. The other important change is they included what the fastest growing segment of the market, which is vape and heated tobacco. I won't ask anybody to raise their hands who vapes and uses heated tobacco, right? But that is a fast growing among young people in particular. Here's another one. Again, same thing. Think of the impact, scale, and sustainability. Impact, political feasibility and sustainability question. So here, end of President Arroyo's administration. So it was politically possible just to get it in March of 2010, just before the elections. It was actually a 2-page law. So the impact of this 2-page law has been tremendous in terms of the number of titles issued by the government. Okay, so going back to, I'll try and make sure that we're going at a decent pace so we can have more time for conversation, excuse me. So, you know, the 3 criteria, again, to revisit, looking at impact, right? Is it going to change behavior? Is it going to continue beyond the intervention? And is it politically possible at the time? So now we move on to kind of the next important piece, which is the process. How we're going to identify and introduce reform. I think for many of you, this will look familiar. So, but this is just the way that we've kind of reorganized this. So one way to think of this, harking back to our idea of the kind of volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. There are generally two kinds, you can categorize them as a predictable future and an unpredictable future. So the predictable future for people who teach, if your student doesn't attend class and you don't study, you'll likely get an F, right? So you can predict that if you're not gonna, because the grading system is very clear. The uncertain future is falling in love, right? You don't really know how that's gonna happen, or not really sure, right? So it's much harder because to tell what the future holds for us when it comes to that. So if you have a predictable future kind of decision, the recommendation is to use the 5 principles of linear logic. And this is basically what we mostly have been taught in many of our schools when we're growing up, right? So you set out a goal, you try to do some analysis to minimize the risk, you try to predict some of the unexpected outcomes and minimize those probabilities, and you try to predict the future with analysis, right? There is a different set of principles when you're dealing with an uncertain future, and I could, the way we think of it, form falls into that category, like falling in love, right? Okay, so here are the 5 principles. These are developed by academics, right? They've been trying to figure out the basic question of what makes entrepreneurs entrepreneurial, right? That's been a field of study. The formal term is called effectuation. There's a Society for Effectual Thinking, right? So there's a group of academics, University of Virginia and other places, are trying to figure out, if there's anything kind of unique and different about entrepreneurs. So here is the 5 principles that they've come up with, right? So the first one is entrepreneurs just start, right? And so, instead of kind of preset goals, what they do is kind of get started with who they know and what they have. And then they begin to figure out, okay, what's possible depending on the context and the situation, as well as your own imagination, right? The second principle is a notion called affordable loss. The idea here is, I'll just go through these ones, that, in order to, again, it's about question about managing risk. So the idea here is to manage risk, just make small bets. Just make the bet that you can afford to lose. The best example we use is when you go to the buffet, and then maybe you'll try a little bit of everything in the buffet, and then you'll go back for the one that you really like. That's a version of the affordable loss, right? Where since you don't know, then you're just going to test it. And of course, this has the other side, which is you need to fail so that you can learn about what's working and what's not working, and a high likelihood that you'll fail more than you'll succeed. Okay. The third principle is to expect and exploit surprises. So we have to interpret kind of bad news as surprises, and surprises as potential clues for new possibilities. Okay, the fourth principle is to harness the power of networks and coalitions. And here, in order to kind of manage and reduce uncertainty, you kind of work with others who also have similar interests. Again, same thing, it's a notion of managing risk. And the fifth one, the idea that the future can be influenced. So if we kind of know our past and here we are in the present, we're trying to figure out our future. The idea is that the future is neither found nor predicted, but it can be shaped and influenced by focusing on the things within our control. So to try and kind of draw, I think, you know, this slide in particular just tries to make it seem like they're in extreme ends just to drive the point. But I think, of course, a lot of our practices are going to be somewhere in between the two. So for linear logic, on a certain future, we're trying to preset your goal. In the entrepreneurial logic, it says just start. The next one is analysis to minimize risks. And the other one is just go ahead and make a small bet. And then you can learn from that. There is analysis there also, right? But it's the question of when analysis comes in. The third is the one tries to figure out the unexpected outcomes. The other one just says, I can't really figure those out, so I'm just going to adjust when they come. The fourth is the power of networks and coalitions. And the fifth is, again, same kind of distinction of analysis can help me predict the future, and the other one is action can help me shape the future. So here is kind of just graphically what the process might look like. Okay, all right, we'll do an exercise, do a small exercise here of what it's like. Okay, so I'm going to, this one will have, it's a zodiac sign exercise. It's an effort to kind of figure out what zodiac sign it is, but I'll give the zodiac sign in two, right? In two sets, right? Because again, this is the way, when you're trying to do policy reform, you're seeing, like, let's say 3 stars and you're saying, okay, what is this telling me? And then you'll see another set of 3 stars and you're trying to still make sense of what it is, right? So this exercise is to kind of simulate what that is and then kind of make your guess. So I don't know how many people are on the call. I can't quite see. 109, wow, okay. Can everybody just remember their guess? Then we'll see who gets it right in the chat, right? Okay. So here's the first set, okay? So which zodiac sign is this? So can people, is there, I don't see the chat function. Is there a chat function? I can't see the chat. Oh, there, okay. Is nobody writing in the chat what their guess is? There you go. Good. Capricorn. Yeah, okay. More guesses? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, good. Wow, they're Mandina. Okay, excellent. All right. I'm going to give you the second set, right? Okay. And then we'll just please keep typing once you there. That's the second set. Maybe a few minutes to. Okay, we ready? Okay, I'm going to put it up now. Okay. I guess we'll look back on the chat and see who got it right. Congratulations to those who guessed Leo. All right, well, so this one, just again to kind of put a finer point on it, we didn't add all the other stars in the in the galaxy, right? So the ability to kind of see some of the stars and try to see the pattern while there's many things. That's kind of the process we're trying to get a sense, right? So, okay, lang, somebody said they're bad at guessing. No, that's the process. just keep that's the entrepreneurial process. Is you try that didn't work. Okay, you try another one that didn't work, right? And you keep going and you keep analyzing and learning. Except for some who got the first guess on Leo. Congratulations. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, so where are we at now? Where we're at is we talked about the 3 criteria, right, to emphasize. Talked about the 5 entrepreneurial principles, right? So we'll end with the final piece is the behavior of leaders, right? Okay, so what we have, again, kind of part literature, part experience, evidence, right? We're just kind of we ended up kind of assembling these 4 behaviors that many of the people who introduced these reforms practiced, right? So the first one is a concept called grit, right? And that some of you may have heard of it. There's a famous professor named Angela Lee Duckworth who has put together I think University of Pennsylvania, put together a 12-question grit test to see whether or not you have what it takes to kind of succeed and persevere. I encourage you to take the test if you like, just to kind of see. But one of the traits that many of the development entrepreneurs that we've seen, successful ones, really just this willingness to persevere when things are really difficult. The second behavior is this kind of desire to be self-directed, right? And I think, of course, when I think of academics, et cetera, that those, they have kind of natural tendencies to want to be self-directed, to kind of do their own research agenda, et cetera, right? So we notice that that's also one of the behaviors. Then here are the other two, which I think are probably some of the more interesting ones. So this confidence and humility, they're actually certainly in our the way we conceive of it, kind of two sides of the same coin, right? You have to have this sense that you can address large, or societal problems, which are really, really difficult. Yet on the other hand, you also have this humility. And this comes from the people, the head of the HR people at Google, right? They get a lot of smart people, but for the smart people to work together, they really need to be, have this kind of willingness to listen, to be challenged, to admit mistakes, to share credit, So in shorthand terms, we refer to that as small ego, right? So we kind of find it's an interesting combination to try and find the big ego, small ego behaviors, right? But they have to kind of, what I guess in our estimation, experience also, they have to kind of go together. All right, now let me just move on to some of the learnings to create work. Here, there's a chain that we see, right, of trust, so that you can be candid with your team members, your colleagues, so that you can get to the best idea, right? Again, this is some of the practices we've seen. And we're sharing this idea of how do you build trust. It's from a 1993 dissertation. I find it to be kind of the easiest way to see whether or not, the team has built the trust, and they're both based on perceptions. That's what's interesting. Right? It's not a kind of numerical measure, but it's a perception, or perhaps it can be, but we haven't, right? You have to perceive each other as competent, and then you have to perceive that you have shared interests, right? So think of situations where you've worked with other people, let's say on a project, and if you're missing either the perception of competence from one of your colleagues or one of your team members, or the perception that your interests were the same or similar, then very hard to kind of work as a team to get to the best idea. And finally, this one is, again, more academic research on what makes for the smartest teams. So here, people are contributing equally. This one, I'm sure the women on the webinar will agree with this. Maybe the men will too. And then the third thing that they noticed is that members scored higher on reading the mind and the eyes test. For those of you who are not familiar with this, the idea is how well you can read emotions from images with only the eyes visible. So this is how we're gonna end the session here for me, is we'll just do a couple of the reading the mind and the eyes test. Okay, same thing, right? Here they are. Okay, so let me kick up the chat here and see. Okay. Okay. So can people please write their answers? And welcome to our friends from Indonesia. Okay, should I reveal? Should I reveal? Okay. All right, uneasy. Okay, okay. You got it right. Okay. All right, we'll do just one more, right? Okay, a little practice. Again, same thing. This test is online also, so you can go ahead and use it there, right? And test it out and see how well. Again, it's if you score well on that, you're much apparently much better, easier for you to work with others. Okay, here we go. There needs to be much more consensus on this one. Okay, I'll reveal. Here we go. I'm just reading the comments. This is great. Okay. All right. Now let's see. So we'll move to. So here are the 5, 4, 3 now. All right. Hopefully will kind of be useful guides for you. Since this is a lot of people also teach here, I also wanted to share just a couple of final things. This is a book of case studies that I co-edited with Raul Fabelia. And and it's interesting, and you can get it online also, because it was written by, the most interesting part I think of the book is it's written by many of the people, each of the authors, who actually introduced the reform. Just to give you an example, one thing for sure, which some of you, the author of this is in 2011, right? The author of the unsuccessful is Ned, a secretary. Of course, if we had written it in 2012, we'd be successful, right? And the author of the Grains Agency, the kind of NFA reform, is one of the current. He's currently a member of the monetary board named Bruce Tolentino. Again, he would have. Sorry, did somebody raise their hands? Is that how it works? How do you do? What should we do? Sorry, I'm trying to read. Did somebody raise their hands? Did I want a question? I'm not hearing anything, so. I don't know how to, can somebody unmute her? I don't know how to do that. Sorry.
Aina or Celine?
Yeah, did somebody, sorry, I don't know how to, did somebody want to say something?
Yeah, sir, we'll entertain questions later on after
Okay.
the presentation. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Right, so anyway, so some of the people, I mean, Bruce Hunton, as I was saying, was an undersecretary at Department of Agriculture when they tried to introduce the reform on NFA, and they finally succeeded. I think it was either in 18, right? That the rice tariff liberalization law. Here's just another source. If you're interested in kind of the footnotes and the kind of literature behind this, I co-wrote this paper with kind of development, uh, leading development analyst named David Booth from the Overseas Development Institute in the United Kingdom. Um, Again, it's also available online, right? So finally, this is our plea to all of you. If you would like, we'd love for you to kind of not only join us, but also, share your stories, and we can learn from each other, both on our Facebook page as well as on our website here that's down below. I think that's all for me. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much, Himes. Thank you very much,
Can I stop
Jaime.
sharing this? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, please, Himes.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Thank you very much, Jaime. So Jaime has just presented us the key concepts of development entrepreneurship. We would like to flesh out these concepts a little bit more by asking Krish Gascon about how she experienced or she applied these key concepts in a specific reform. So Krish Gascon is the leader of the Asia Foundation team that is working on disaster risk reduction. So she's been on this thing for a few years now, and she's always approached the reform from the eyes of from the lens of development entrepreneurship. So Krish, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So thank you very much, PSPA, for giving us this opportunity to share our story, how our team worked on a particular reform about disaster risk reduction. So just to tell you a little bit of a background about our reform, what's it all about. So we focused on how to get more access for local government units with regard to their funding from the National DRRM Fund. So why is this the focus of our reform? So we used the three criteria of a good reform, as mentioned by Jaime earlier. He was our advisor at that time. So we looked at the mandates of LGUs with regard to DRR. So they are mandated to allocate 5% of their estimated regular revenues for disaster risk reduction and management activities. So also the DRRM law mandated them to do a lot of functions with DRR. This includes prevention, mitigation, preparedness, setting up of their operation center, evacuation center, doing response, relief, up to the whole recovery and rehabilitation. We are all familiar with the story that if some LGUs, especially those who are in the low income levels, like 4th to 6th class LGUs, who are located in the most hazard prone areas in the Philippines, who get hit by numerous disasters every now and then. So it seems that their funds are not really that sufficient in order for them to prepare and to bounce back from these disasters. So the law also mandated that they can request for funding for DRRM projects and activities from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund, and also from the national agency budgets. But looking at the National DRRM Fund, a little bit of a background, it is a national fund that is also mandated by the national law. It ranges from 11 to 19 billion a year. And national government agencies and LGUs can request for funding through the recommendation of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council towards the Office of the President for final approval of these projects. So we looked at the releases of the National Fund, and it seems that the releases are biased to national government agencies. There seems a few LGUs accessing the big chunk of fund, this lump sum annual appropriation at the national budget. So we also looked at the types of projects that were funded, and these are also geared towards post-disaster reconstruction and rehabilitation. We began asking why, doing a little bit of research, and we found that the rules that are being used or the implementing guidelines that are being used to process this request are outdated. These are circa 1999. So these are the pre National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Law, which may not be that responsive for our local governments in the front lines. So our reform did the policy to revise the rules on the National DRRM Fund, its management and administration, working through the National DRRM Council with the Office of the Civil Defense to make the fund more responsive through these three approaches. We streamlined the process. We did easier project templates for LGUs to fill out, and we updated the menu of projects to make it more aligned with the mandates of the national DRRM law, which is proactive instead of the reactive types of projects. So previously, there were no evacuation centers being funded from the fund for these LGUs. But after the rules were released in year 2017, LGUs had been able to access the fund for their evacuation centers, for flood control projects. So those are the types of projects. So with regard to streamlining the process, this is just to show you the old process for the LGUs. So there are a lot of multiple back and forth with multiple agencies who are requested to review a certain type of project proposal. So if this is a road or a bridge, so the requests have to go through the Department of the Public Works and Highways, and then going back to the Office of Civil Defense, and then reviews at the regional, at the district level. So what we did is a regional mechanism in order to streamline this review and validation process, so that when it gets to the National DRRM Council, it is more of vetted off by these expert agencies. So the result is an increase in the percentage of projects, of local projects that were proposed and that were funded from the national fund. So that's the background, and that's what the reform is all about. We are going to proceed with the process. So it's not as neat and as straightforward as it seemed. We used entrepreneurial principles, applied entrepreneurial logic in this reform. It is not as linear as it looks like, but we just started with a couple of things we know, we read about from various assessments about what went wrong during Yolanda, and we approached a couple of people to be in our team who are working with local governments and who have experienced doing disaster risk reductions with LGUs. And we approach also experts, technical experts from the academe and from the local governance like DILG and ULAP. And we also approached experts to join our team. So we learn by doing. We explored a couple of bets, a handful of policy options or policy alternatives, which are all known and we think that will contribute towards attaining our goal of increasing access of LGUs to national funds. So these are shown in the screen, but what we want to highlight here is that we pursued all of these simultaneously alongside each other, and we as a team are pursuing all of these at the same time, but we are carefully observing what policy options are gaining tractions and what are not, given the political feasibility and the timing at that time. So if you sample is we started exploring and doing the reform in early 2015. So we thought that the timing is right because Yolanda had just happened in November of 2013, and a lot of talks were going on about revising the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management laws. So we thought of including a provision on the amended DRR law for LGUs to be capacitated and to have that funds for DRR. But then we observed and pursued this. However, Congress and Senate have not yet conducted any single meeting in 2015 about amending the law. So it lingered, and then 2016 was election year. So our group agreed, assessed, and made our analysis whether we should go on or just let it go, and then pursue other policy tracks that are gaining traction. So expect and exploit surprises. So as I've mentioned in the past slide, so we zeroed in eventually on revising the rules on the utilization and the management of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. At first, when we pursued it in 2016, the previous administration said that it's not feasible. So at that time, it was kind of our last bet along the line, and we said that, oh, our reform was rejected. Our reform is not politically feasible, or maybe it's not technically sound at that time. We said that okay, it will be elections this coming May, so practically it's the end of it. So, but then some of our team members have remained positive about the reform, because we have built enough coalition and networks from inside and outside the government who are believing also on the soundness of the reform. So we stayed on that, and I think what helped us, or what carried us through, or the reform through, is the crucial aspect that our people from the government, bureaucrats inside the NDRRM Council, the Office of Civil Defense, have been supportive of the reform, so that when the 2016 administration change occurred, like mid 2016, the opportunity was there to orient and brief the new leadership of the NDRRM Council. Fortunately, at that time, they were open and willing to listen to these bureaucrats inside the government. And then we also rode on various forum and maintained our presence with regard to different conferences with regard to DRR and climate change, and also rode on the new government's streamlining government process priority at that time. So those are the things which carried the reform forward. But more importantly, I think also, and I couldn't emphasize this much, that our champions inside the government, we didn't know any of these champions inside the government at the onset. So we were able to know them and approach them because of our initial partners, which composes of our team at the Asia Foundation, the NGO Center for Disaster Preparedness, ULAP and DILG, So they helped us, and they are very willing to sell the reform, push the reform forward, work for the reform, do a lot of presentations, briefings with the decision makers that eventually built the need and the clamor for this reform. So, how to influence the future? For our team, it's really the policy staff work. We are always ready, and we are prepared whenever there's a briefing, a meeting. We completed policy papers, do our analysis, our homework. We map the process. We tried to check where are the bottlenecks and how can we be able to enhance this draft guidelines by also doing several consultations with LGUs and local government practitioners and then NGOs. And then those composes the coalition, and it eventually led to the passage of the revised guidelines. So for my final slide, it's sharing with you how our team was able to work and pull through with the reform. Having a great team composed or which has the following behaviors in them is really a learning process for me. Um, the key, I think, is that you have to establish the roles of each other. Like there's a technical person, there's also a person who does a good networking to share ideas, to also sell the reform to decision makers. There is also um, our team members who are also in the government, who are our insider champions, as they say. So some of the quotable quotes that I remember is that our team believes that maybe we do not have the monopoly of of intelligence or the expertise with regard to disaster risk reduction, but we are humble enough and persevering enough, and that grit lies in each and every one to accomplish those policy papers, presentations, and briefing materials on time. Um, they're very hardworking. Draft policy papers will be sent, whatever we come to think about that will help us with the technical soundness of the reform. We kind of just pursued it and dig deeper. And I think another behavior that's also important is the confidence. So our funder, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade at the time, said that our, how is the political feasibility of this? How is the reform going to be pulled through? So Jaime was confident enough with our team. He said that give us 6 months. We will get back to you with answers, with our analysis, with our consultations from our stakeholders. So if you have that inside your team, that confidence, it radiates among each other, and it inspires each other to do better and to believe in oneself as you contribute towards your team objectives. So lastly, humility. So this hard work, this wit and grit and autonomy, it also relates to humility in the sense that we are willing to listen to stakeholders. We are willing to be corrected in our drafts. So it's always a working draft, you know. It's always a working draft, because one thing we also learned that there is no perfect or best draft. It's always a work in progress. It's a better one. It's a better one because you've built consensus and you've built ownership of coalitions, champions, and development entrepreneurs toward your reform objective. So thank you very much. I hope this helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krish. Krish, you might want to end your sharing, the share screen. Okay, thank you very much, Krish. Doc Lizan, do we have any questions or any comments? Mr. Mario Aguja has raised his hand. Can I ask the host to make him visible? Or Mr. Mario, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, yes, sir. What's your question, sir?
Yeah, just in the presentation, it was made mention that one of the successful reforms was basically on the water privatization. May we be enlightened on what perspective that it was a successful reform initiative, given that from a public perspective, for example, the price of water did not increase, the services of water, especially in the metropolis, did not also increase. So I think it's interesting to know from what perspective it was considered as a successful reform initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Jaime?
Yeah, sorry, sir. I think the author of that chapter was Dr. Fabella. I think it was the coverage of, if I remember correctly, sorry, it was in 2011. I think it was the coverage of the the number of households that were able to get access to a water service.
Okay. Himes, thank you for the answer. Mr. Mario?
Yeah, it's just interesting because I think from a neoliberal perspective, as part of the prescription of the IMF and the World Bank on structural adjustment, we are probably successful on the water side. But in terms of the delivery and delivery of services to the public, I think my sense up to today is we actually failed on the water side. In fact, it developed a monopoly of its own. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that interaction. Just goes to show that the process of reform and development never ends, because we get something done better and then there's something else that needs to be done further. Mr. Willie Boyson Villarama also raised his hand. Sir Willie? Oh, he's still talking on the phone. Anybody else has a question for either Jaime or for Krish? Mama Lu. Yes, Doc Malu, please. You might want to unmute yourself, Doc, because your sound system's muted.
I think Dr. Malu, Sir Rene will give her reaction and comments on the presentation.
Okay.
Dr. Malu Rebolida.
Yeah, she's muted. I'm trying to unmute her. Doc Malu. There you go. Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
All right.
There we go.
Well, first of all, thank you to the DAP, Dean Lisan, and also to Rene and Jaime and the team. I think that your presentation, both in terms of the framework, the principles, and then the application, are all very, very timely, especially that we need innovative responses to what is going on around us. I think that your framework can be compared with what we have learned before. We've heard of frenetic leadership, we've heard of transformational, transactional, and so many other types of leadership strategies. But this one embeds the notion of leadership within a bigger framework of addressing real live development issues. And we have more than live issues, I think, this past 2 months and in the days to come. So I think that given the principles, the criteria, and all the other elements in your framework, am I in the right track to say and have the feeling that the leadership factor is really the driving force there, or the controlling factor, because after all, it is the behavior of the leaders that will stimulate action on the process and be able to produce the kind of transformation in the policies. And the other thing, my impression is that we really address the policy more than the actions of people in the administrative units or in the level of programs and projects, because it is really policy that sets the mandate. It sets the um, legitimacy to the actions that will be done, whether it is to release funding or to set up certain projects. So you have both anchors getting into the picture there. But I think I would like to agree with the flow of the presentation, that you highlighted the leadership factors, because it is the human being who is the leader who will set all of this process in motion. But may also raise another point that there are two kinds of leadership, of leaders. One that's de facto, and the other one that is de jure, meaning leaders that are appointed, designated. They are career officials. They are given the memorandum on what tasks and positions to take. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are the leaders who will take on this paradigm and have a shift from all the other previous learnings, the old formula that we have, and move on to a new paradigm. But we have people there, regardless of age, gender, whether they are old career people or young career people, new entrants, who might have a way of absorbing this new paradigm. So I think that the DAP is in a very good position to spearhead this approach in development entrepreneurship, because the graduate programs have both um, graduate students at the senior level and also at the middle level and at the entrance. And so if this perspective can be introduced, then we can at least have an infusion of a paradigm, a new paradigm that can help us address the VUCA, the vulnerability, uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity of the COVID phase. I think for now, I can just say that, and maybe the rest can also jump in, and I can add the other things that I jotted down in my notes.
Thank you very much, Mama Lu. Thank you very much. Himes, you want to respond to that? Jaime?
Two responses. Just a shout out to my good friend Malu Rebolida. Nice to see you again. and also maybe perhaps I think you're correct. In kind of the usual, agency versus structure. You're right that I think that from what I've seen and the way the model is set up, it really focuses on human agency. So I think you're absolutely correct. If I could maybe ask one of our other fantastic young leaders, Grace Hammond, to say a few words also. I think she's also on the call.
Yeah, she is. Grace? Grace, can you unmute your... Yes, there you go, Grace.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, Grace.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank the Development Academy of the Philippines, Dean Lisan, as well as PSPA for this webinar, because I think this is a continuation of the introduction that we gave in the last conference that we had. And finally, using new technology, this is so exciting. This is my first webinar ever. So hello, PSPA members, and thank you for such a great presentation from Jaime, and also for my former student. Napakagaling. It's amazing how our case study was so succinctly presented. And Malu, hi. Lisan, hi. Rene, hi. Yeah, I think I just want to say that I'm happy that Malu said that this may be a very innovative approach. And it's true what Jaime has been saying, that, hello, are you hearing me?
Yeah. Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc.
You
Go
hear
ahead,
me?
Doc.
Okay.
Uh,
And as Jaime was saying, um, really it's human agency. So leadership really plays a good role, and I think that's very nice that there are characteristics of leadership that Jaime underscored, and having been part of some of our advocacies and successful ones, I must say kudos to the what has been highlighted as an important ingredient in development entrepreneurship. And it's true that this is while people know about it because it quite is a metaphor for life where we really indeed are in a VUCA world, and we cannot anticipate like this COVID. We didn't realize, mga kapatid, ngayon ko lang na-experience ito. Akala ko hindi ko, I thought in my lifetime, I'm 65, I would experience anything like this. And therefore, life continues. And thank you that we have discovered this approach of development entrepreneurship that locates the importance of rearing a new generation of practitioners. And thank you, Chris, that you also highlighted the way people get to work together and the role of also academicians and leaders of academe that can be influential advocates as they are, so that um, we can raise a new generation of leaders where we are. And I think this is where PSPA, most academics are in a very critical place, uh, given the years of having mentored people who are now in government. And based on my experience, trust is very important as a very important quality of leaders. So when we are able to use and leverage the trust that our students have given us, we ourselves can be champions, whether we are in the university or we are in government agencies. And congratulations for Chris. I think she highlighted how important that was, uh, because when they thought they couldn't get it through, the inspiration that I think the people inside the office of the disaster risk and management office did get to have a life of its own, that they continued to pursue and ask the team to continue working. And of course, the confidence of those wire manufacturers who are willing to give and continue to support the effort really means a lot and inspires everyone. So, Lisan, I really believe that this is an approach we have to teach our our people in DAP. We are at a very critical institution to be able to make this real for them
Yes, ma'am.
by
We're doing
making them real advocates. Yeah,
Yes, thank you for
yeah,
that, Ma'am Grace. No,
yeah.
and really, we at the PSPA, and of course with the AP, and in
Hmm.
coordination and collaboration with other universities in the Philippines, I think we will be able to realize, no, these advocacies na we are presenting right now, especially on development entrepreneurship. No,
And
so
congratulations. Yeah,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you
This is
for
a
that.
fantastic audience that you were able to put together.
Yes.
And my friends Jaime and Chris and Renee, kudos to all of you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that, ma'am. And of course, we are joined by our colleagues from Indonesia as well. No, so PSPA is really doing its best to have these international
Hmm.
perspectives. That's why
Hmm.
in the past we had international webinars, and in the next coming weeks we'll have another international webinar. So
Fantastic,
right now,
fantastic. Mhm.
Sir Rene, I would like to phone in another PSPA board member, Dr. Al Derecho, if he is still there for one question. Dr. Al, are you still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Earlier, I received a message that you are disconnected, but now you're back. Thank you,
Uh,
Dr. Al.
it, a policy reform, the connections. Anyway, okay, thank you very much for the very beautiful presentation. My question is only something like all these things are driven by a practical leader. You know?
Dr. Al,
Are
there's something wrong with your audio. Okay.
yeah?
All right.
Can you
I
hear me?
can hear you very well.
Yeah. Okay. Um, the review it is that these things are really driven by a practical leader, as Jaime has presented it. And I think the most important thing is the patience. And of course, if I may put it in an equation, politics is a constant in the equation. It's not a
Sir,
variable.
ayaw daw tanggapin ng guard. Andiyan ka pa ba sa guard?
Yeah. Anyway, so patience. My question is only over the period that you have been doing this last 10 years, what are the timelines of success factor?
Doc
Okay.
Al, we lost you, Doc Al.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't hear you. Oh.
Maybe, Sir Rene, we can proceed with Dr. or Professor Sonia Pimentel, if she's online. Okay. Lost in translation din daw siya. Sorry for
Okay.
that. What
Oo.
about Dr. Christy Salvosa? Dr. Christy, are you there? Okay. Anyway, we'll have one question, Sir Rene, from Dr. Muhammad from Indonesia. Would like to, sir, are you there? Can we phone you in?
Okay.
All right.
Hello.
Please.
Hello.
Go
Yes,
ahead, Doc.
go
Yes.
ahead with your question.
My sound is clear. My sound.
You're
Okay.
clear, sir. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I am Dr. Muhammad Uhai Asad from South Kalimantan Province, Indonesia. I will to thank you to invite to join this discuss. Very interesting for me. I want to deliver my information with my friend here. I am living from one of region Indonesia, well-known rich in natural resources called mining in South Kalimantan province. The exploitation massively coal mining industry in South Kalimantan, but uh, have been not yet to making local the people to increasing of the uh, mining industry, the impact on local the people on poverty of local people and many people living in full. Mining in South Kalimantan to be instrument to how to build local position to be campaign to local election in South Kalimantan. We'll know all several local government in South Kalimantan province is the background entrepreneurship, the background coal mining industry. Many local positions to supporting for financial for local election in South Kalimantan. The natural resources embodied but not given for the people local to buy to how to make the then better for economic life for local people. I wanted to I have my question for you. Is this depend on the lack of local democracy or regulation can to make the people then better for life? Uh, Mining industry and the politics of local oligarchy. Local oligarchy to under control of natural resource, especially coal mining industry in South Kalimantan. For me, natural resources in South Kalimantan is not mining for local people, just for a local oligarch and local predatory in South Kalimantan province. I have to ask a comment from my friend here. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. I'd like to request Sir Jaime and Ms. Krish Gascon to answer the question of Dr. Mohammed, please.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed, that's a very hard question. Yeah, we're probably confronted with the same or similar situation where there are, influential local elites. That is my guess. Actually, the one who has probably a little bit more experience on that, Rene, can I put you on the spot?
Yes, please.
Rene
Okay.
worked in a local government for
Yeah.
20 years. He doesn't look, he started when he was 15. So,
Dr. Muhammad, good afternoon. I'll try to answer your question the best way I can. It goes back to the principle of selecting your reform. And we said earlier that your reform must have impact, it must be sustainable, and above all, it must be politically feasible. So my understanding is that you don't think that mining is good for your locality in your place, and you would like to have a policy in place that would prevent mining. Now, you are in the best position to assess the impact of that kind of policy. We cannot do that for you because you know the situation better. So, but I do think it will have impact. And if it's a formal policy, a law passed by government, then it would be sustainable, right? Your biggest challenge, it seems to me, is the political feasibility, because you were saying that there are local authorities who have other interests, vested interests in the mining thing. So I guess that's the challenge before all of us now. When you have a situation where your reform is not politically acceptable, what do you do? I can only try to answer from my own experience, and my answer is that sometimes the best possible reform is not feasible, so I'm willing to go to the second best possible reform. I'm even willing to go to the third best possible reform. Oh, okay. I've got a nice screenshot here.
Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Dr. Mohammed.
Yeah.
At this point in time, I would like to acknowledge Sir Willie Villarama for his question, then to be followed by Sir Alexander Alaan and by Dr. Rosel Renario. So, Sir Willie Villarama, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I'll go back to you later on, Dr. Muhammad. I'll acknowledge first Mr. Sir Willie Villarama, if you're there. Okay. I don't get any response from Sir Willie. May I proceed to Sir Alexander Alaan? Sir Alexander, do you have a question? You raised your hand earlier. Okay, no answer. Okay, there you go, sir. Okay. Your question, please, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir,
Go
we can hear you.
I just would like to react on the issue raised by Dr. Habib Mohammed on matters pertaining to the mining industry in South Kalimantan. Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
In the Philippine experience, there are two basic laws that has been passed regarding utilization of mineral resources. First, on mining industry, which are classified as big scale, this is run by the national government. And the small scale mining are also policies that are governed by the local government. Now, in South Kalimantan, as far as you have just mentioned, the people, the local oligarchy are the one controlling. That should not be the case because under the principle of our existing principle is that the natural resources are supposed to be owned by the state, and it is not owned by any single or few rich people. There has to be a reform to be done in your place if we are to expect a sustainable and equitable uh, utilization of these resources. There has to be a policy reorientation, re-engineering of policies that will fit in the needs of the people, not only for the few and the rich, but to all the people also.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Alex. Maybe we can encourage Sir Alex and Dr. Muhammad to continue their conversation after this webinar. I think Sir Alex would be of great help to the situation of Dr. Muhammad. Sir Alex, do you have a question for Jaime
No
or for
problem, no
Krish?
problem.
Hello, sir.
Later.
Sige, sir. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes,
Doc
Sir
Chris?
Rene, yeah, I think Dr. Rosel Renario has a question for our resource persons. Dr. Rosel, can I bring you in?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Ready po. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Maayong hapon, Rosel from Cebu Normal University, Cebu City. Thank you very much, Dr. Lizan, our president and PSPA, for the invitation. It's a very nice new input. Sir Jaime, Sir Rene, and the team, Ms. Krishna, presented a new paradigm in leadership. They impressed on a non-linear pathway for reform because reform implementation is very difficult, particularly in LGUs. Lately, in the previous webinars we have, I always hear President Lizan, Dr. Alex mention about seamless collaborations between LGU, IATF, for example, but we have so many experiences wherein there are different implementation practices between IATF and LGU in different municipalities, provinces specifically. Sir Jaime, a while ago, mentioned smartest organizations should have great teamwork. My question is, as a leader, what should be the best, if not the best, a creative organizational driver so that we could have a more stable agency implementation, seamless collaboration, so that we could have more effective policy reform, particularly with what is going on with COVID or pandemic implementation.
Thank you, Dr. Rosel. Yeah. Can
Right.
we hear
Okay.
from Jaime, sir?
Wow.
Another
Okay.
hard question.
I know. Can I? Where are the easy questions? um, I think the way I would approach it is maybe again just kind of thinking and perhaps maybe Grace and Renek and others can jump in. My sense is it is important to recognize the individual and organizational interests of the people you're working with. And I tend to take those as a given, right? And you can distinguish between personal as well as, and they're professional. There could be personal, and professional interests of an individual, and then organizational interests. So I tend to take those as given. So in terms of trying to introduce or achieve a successful reform, my starting point recommendation is to just accept that they all have those various interests. So that a key to a good reform is one, recognizing those, and frankly, to harnessing them, not trying to change those those interests. If we can arrange it so, and so it would be a nicer and easier place to work if we all collaborated more constructively, right? That would be would lead to a better world. But um, in the kind of, I take a more kind of pragmatic, if you want to call it, or realistic view that it's going to be very hard for various organizations sometimes to collaborate seamlessly um, because of differing interests. So the job of kind of good reformers is to, I think, just to recognize those and figure out, okay, everybody has their own self-interest, again, at different levels, personal, professional, and then organizational. And how do we arrange that so that there's better things happen? Maybe others can have a different take at that.
Thank you for that, Sir Jaime.
Thank you, Sir Jaime.
Yeah, would you like to add on it? Miss Krisha Gaston.
Yes, yes. Hi, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Self, for the question. Just adding up on Jaime's thoughts on that. I would also add like a sense of shared goals. So it's already a given that they have or these organizations have their respective interests or their particular expertise or their particular mandate. So it's really important to have that shared goal that they can relate to with regard to their vested interest. So in the disaster reduction, the Office of Civil Defense would like to make their job a lot easier with regard to processing the requests of these of these local government units. They would like to have their job more at ease. So streamlining the processes would work best for them. And for the LGU, that would work. The reform is would enable them to propose projects that are in line with their need. So the confluence of that shared goal in relation to your interests. So I hope it makes sense.
Right. Thank you for that, Ms. Krisha.
Thank you.
And in relation to that collaboration that Dr. Rosel pointed out earlier, Mr. Christian Noblesa in our chat group mentioned about the barter system. It's an ongoing initiative right now in Iloilo City as well as in Bacolod City. So I don't know if Sir Christian is there. I'd like to bring you in. Sir Christian, are you available for your question regarding the barter system? Okay. Anyway, I don't think he has a good connection, but his idea really is this barter system is now in the community, no? Especially in Iloilo and Bacolod City, as I mentioned earlier. And this system helped the community to acquire essential goods without using money. So this addresses entrepreneurial dilemma in some ways encountered by MSMEs and also encourages solidarity within the community. I don't know if Sir Rene and Sir Jaime and Miss Krisha can add some inputs on this one.
Thank you very much, Doc. It seems to me that that is already happening here in Cebu also. I've heard my wife talk about it earlier this morning. And I guess that's a very good example of a change that has happened without a formal policy behind it. Because no law was passed that said that you can do barter trade. I mean, this is I guess based on the consensual agreement of people who participate in the barter trade. I think Christian is online already. He must be in a better position to talk about this. Christian?
Hi, hello, good evening. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
very well, Sir Christian. Please proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. This is from Basa State University. Currently here in Iloilo City, we are using actually the old age barter system that has been used in ancient times. My question is for you guys is that does the barter system will affect the if it is incorporated in the legislative efforts in our government, will it affect, I mean, in the taxes that has been collected by our government, or and can it help in the current situation that we can incorporate it with the new normal?
Sir Rene or Sir Jaime, would you like to answer the question of Rene?
Yeah, let me try to answer that. That's a very interesting question. That's a uncharted territory for us at this point in time. And probably it will be part of the new normal since people will find it more convenient to exchange goods rather than to use the medium of money. Um, as I said, this is happening right now without any policy or legislation behind it. This is only happening because people have agreed to exchange goods among themselves. And of course, there is a transaction there, but definitely no taxes, di ba? Because walang financial transaction, walang pera doon. Um, so of course, no collection of taxes by the government. So I guess Christian's question is that if this kind of exchange will be formalized, like if there's a law that's going to be passed to regulate or whatever with regards to barter exchange, um, will that law have an impact on revenue generation or tax collection? That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. And I would revert to the idea that would people want to have this passed or regulated, or would people need to have a policy to do this? Because right now they're doing it even without policy. Thank you.
Yes, that is an emerging ano na, emerging initiative from the community and from the people, no? So you see the collaboration done by citizens right now, and also we have another barter system in Bukidnon, as mentioned by Sir Mark Limuel Garcia. So it's really moving, no? It's really moving, and I would like to, in relation to that, no, we have few questions from Dr. Malu Rebolida and from Sir Willie Villarama and also from Sir Cesar Bugaw Isan. No? So I'd like to call on Dr. Malu first. Malu?
Yes, yes. I would just like to add another point and perhaps emphasize it as well. How does it fit into the framework of development entrepreneurship? Since we talked about grit and other variables there, this is the point about data. When we are immersed in a contingency situation, we just want to go and use our grit and try to resolve it the best way we can. And as you said, in entrepreneurship, it's really whatever you know at hand and whatever you can do at hand. However, infusing a little bit of the logic of logic, how do we factor in the role of data? We have good ideas and it can sprout and we can do whatever we might think is best for the moment. But well, as probably from the academic background, how do we look back to the past, the knowledge that has been accumulated in the past about similar or not exactly the same situation, but some realities there that we can learn lessons from. More often than not, yung bang bugso ng pulse na, sige, basta may magawa tayo to do something right away without and I would hear people say, "Oh, research, that's going to take so much time. I mean, you cannot do policy research anymore. We need your answer right now." But I think that we can also avoid some pitfalls in the use of development entrepreneurship. If entrepreneurs can also be data conscious, they can also be research conscious, and we can also dig deeper into local knowledge or whatever knowledge there is, so we can see if we are walking at the cliff already, or doing something that will have adverse effects in the future. So more or less, a little bit of a widening of the variables that we can control, uh, putting in the reason of logic and the reason of grit and intuition.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Dr. Malu, because right now we really want to use policy tools, no? Especially using foresight, policy foresight under futures thinking framework. So we need to do this by using the right method for the right problem. So that's very important. Research is very important in all these undertakings. And before I phone in Sir Willie Boysan, I'd like to raise this question of Dr. Alfredo Alderecho earlier. He was disconnected. What is the average time based on their experience to succeed on the intended policy reform?
Mm.
Sir Rene or Sir Jaime?
Let's see. Well, I can speak to the property rights reform that we referred to. Took about 3 years. I think the work on Clark Airport makes me sound old, but it was like I started that work in 2003 when the only thing landing in Clark were migratory birds. Krish, do you recall the reform you worked on DRR?
Yep. Like less than 3 years also. We started early 2015, and then the reform passed March of 2017. So like 2.5 to 3 years. And that surpassed an administration change. So
Can I also just respond a little bit, Balu, to, and actually I'm going to ask Krish and then also her lead technical person. Is Susan still on the call? In terms of kind of the mixing of, we talked about the political strategy, but there's certainly quite a bit of technical and analytical work that goes with small bets. I wanted to ensure that we could at least, even just in this disaster risk reduction case, there was a lot of technical work that went with the process. That's, I will say, in the Philippines, my impression is that is partly why the development entrepreneurs have credibility, because they've done the work, right? So as you're suggesting. Krish, you want to just elaborate a little bit more?
yes. So data really helps, but it shouldn't also stop you from selling and pursuing your reform. Instead, you use available data to enrich your deck or your set or your policy papers, no? In the sense that as you talk to people, people will point you to this study, or people will point you to this initiative, and they will build on that eventually. So that's what we did. So we started mapping the process first with regard to how a certain local government unit requests for funding. So we did a timeline, like a time and motion study that go with it through interviews and through various cases. So we mapped out how long it is, what are the requirements that goes with it, and what are the agencies that it needs to pass through. So by that time and motion study, we consulted practitioners and those who have undergone the process. And also with our technical expert at that time, we asked her to look at available LGU funds. Are LGUs really in need of national funds? Are they in a bad position? How can we tell if they are in a bad position? What are the figures supporting this? So how much is the average local disaster risk reduction and management fund? So our technical expert came up with an Excel file of 4 to 6 class LGUs, and she grouped their estimated revenues and estimated the expenditures that are needed for implementing the RRM projects, and we sort of quantified that gap, that this is their level of resource and this is what they need to prepare for disasters. So that's how we continued to sell and enhance the case so that we can build it on and face the decision makers, because of course decision makers would really like evidence naman, as we all know. So that's
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah, that's right. That's how we go with our policy directions. No, it must be evidence based using these tools that we have right now. So it's almost 4 o'clock. We have 2 minutes left, and we have so many questions. And one of which is on the barter system. No, from Miss Rosemary Casemiro. Can a barter system be upscaled to include 2 or more LGUs? Maybe in a separate webinar, we can discuss the barter system, no? Because that's an emerging practice going on right now in many communities in the Philippines. So I'm sorry to, maybe we can get one more question, no? Taka. I called on Sir Cesar Bugaw-Isan. Can you make it very brief? Sir Cesar Bugaw-Isan, are you there? Okay, seems we don't have him. What about Sir Willie Villarama? Very briefly, sir. Okay, all right. So I'd like to go back to Dr. Christina Salvosa. Ma'am Christy, I believe you have one question for our resource persons. Can I bring you in, Ma'am Christy? Okay. All right. Ma'am Christy, are you there? All right. Seems that. All right, there you go. Ma'am Christy, can you proceed with your question? It looks like that we have technical glitches right now.
Doc, parang ready na
Yes.
yata si Sir Willie, Doc.
Yeah, Sir Willie. Yeah, are you there? Yeah, there you go. Sir, can you fix your audio, please? We can't hear you. Sir Willie, can you fix your audio? Okay, there seems to be a delay now in the transmission. That's part of our connectivity right now. Okay, I think, okay, Sir Willie, are you, sorry, sir, we can't hear you. We would love to hear your question, but I think your audio is still not functioning well. Okay. All right. So, sir, we'll entertain your question via chat box po. Okay. So anyway, Sir Rene, do you have any other comments or thoughts regarding our webinar today?
Oh, thank you very much, Doc Lizan. I just wanted to add to that last point, yung kay Ma'am Malu. Sa development entrepreneurship, we also have this idea, and this is again based in literature, na yung mga decisions natin, including the selection of the reforms, is a result of science, it's a result of art, and it's a result of craft. So yung combination ng tatlong faculties na yon, those are the ones that lead us to consider possible reforms and to make decisions about them as we go along. So certainly po, there is room for science, there is room for data, for analysis. I guess the whole point lang is that you should be able to manage it so that you don't go into paralysis through analysis. And of course, you know, recognizing na any plan or any idea that you may have, um, when it encounters reality, you might have to change it again. Sabi nga ni Mike Tyson, and this is a favorite quote ni Jaime, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face or in the mouth. So yun. Ma'am Doc Lisan, thank you very much and for PSPA for hosting this webinar this afternoon. And we're very happy to have shared development entrepreneurship with you.
Thank you very much, Asia Foundation, Sir Jaime, Ms. Krish, and of course, Ma'am Grace Hammond and Sir Rene for this collaboration. Maybe next time we can further discuss other aspects on development entrepreneurship with our colleagues, because there are so many questions that you want to raise, but we have limited time. But of course, our discussion room is open. You can post your questions in our messenger box or in our FB page, the PSPA FB page, and also to our YouTube channel, which is PSPA official. So for those of you who have friends who would like to view the webinar, they can go to our PSPA YouTube channel. So once again, thank you so much to our resource persons, to our participants, and of course to our reactors. So muli magandang hapon, but before we end, kindly go to your gallery for a quick photo session. All right, I think Celine will be the one to give us a cue. Celine.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile everyone. Okay.
All right, maraming salamat po. Magandang
Thank you
hapon.
po.
Terima kasih to our Indonesian friends. So we have a few reminders there flashed on our screen. First is kindly answer our post-webinar survey found at this link, flashed on your screen. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.